This channel is made possible through the support of generous listeners just like you. If you would like to be a part of helping us bring our message of hope, peace, love, and spiritual truth to the world, please consider heading to experienceofthesoul.com/support, where you can join us as an ongoing patron or simply make a one-time gift. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
Natural Awakenings Magazine and Unity of Nashville present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 80, The Search for God. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson, and I am the host of this amazing show. Happy today to be in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
We hope you had a wonderful New Year celebration and are ready to get going. We so are about encouraging you on the spiritual journey and on life's path. I was talking to a friend recently and said, I've heard from people so often that they are applying the teachings I'm giving at work or in their personal life. And she looked at me and said, well, what else is there? There's work and personal life. That's the whole thing. And so it made me happy to know that the teachings are making an impact and that we are all over the world. And we thank you for being a part of sharing that. And today is the first show of the new year. We have some incredible things in store for you this year, some amazing guests that are coming on as well. And we just feel honored to bring you the show.
Yeah, it's 2020. I think you can feel it too. 2020 is going to be a really good year for us here on the channel, and I want to thank you for listening and thank you for all of your continued support. But we do have lots of really exciting things in store for 2020.
Yeah, and what I'm going to try to get better at this year, friends, is telling you when I'm going to be speaking in your area. I have several speaking events that are all over the country, and I'm going to be, when I remember, I will be telling you about those to have you connect in with me. It means a great deal to me when I can meet you in person, one-on-one, and really get a sense for where you are in the journey and how I can be of support to you. And I'm also this year going to be teaching online classes. As a matter of fact, my Dream Big, Live Big class starts 1 week from today. If you're on Facebook, you're probably seeing messages from me about that very thing. And I'm real excited to be bringing it because I already have people from, 2 time zones away, which is exciting, that have already signed up for the class and are really looking to go deeper on the journey and to really make 2020 their best year yet.
Now, this class is different than what you would normally do like on a Wednesday at CCU Orlando. This is a focused online-only class where you're able to give focused attention to the participants live, yeah?
Yes, and it is. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's very focused. The class is limited to 20 people because I want to be able to give people a really genuine, authentic attention and really make sure that the information I'm giving is really helping them move forward on the journey. Included in the class is even a one-on-one call and such as that. So as a matter of fact, I want to mention today is the last day to get the discounted rate for the class. The class is $300 for the 7 weeks, but if you register by today, it's $250.
And we'll have a link to that in our show notes. Be sure to check out experienceofthesoul.com.
Yeah.
And click on the link in show for episode 80.
And, so it is show 80. It is the first show of the year. And it's important to me to really expand our scope in terms of how we look at spiritual things, because so much of 2019 was on the individual, and it will always come back to the individual. But we want to think of things in an expansive way and then apply our particular place on the path, our particular spiritual development as it relates to the larger collective. And I think this will make sense to you as we move forward, because today's show is called The Search for God. the search for God. What I've learned after so many years of working with individuals, and it's literally been 30 years now that I have worked with individuals one-on-one in spiritual settings and educational settings, and I've worked with kids and adults. And I have seen a wide spectrum of interests and even non-interest on this topic, the search for God. What I've realized is that some people are actually not interested and do not believe in God at all. It's not in their awareness. They haven't been told about it. And so they kind of go through life, and their concept is, eat, drink, and be merry, and get all you can. You move up the corporate ladder.
The universe is governed by chaos and
Yeah.
coincidence, and
like what the hell, basically it's like, get as much as you can. You step on a few people on the way, that's life.
I got mine.
Exactly. And so that's in the search for God. That is, of course, the most base of development. I mean, that's the lowest development possible. It's almost like this. There's not even a desire to even believe or know there is a God. Now, just up from that in our awareness is what we see most of America in, believe it or not, which is there has been a faith of our childhood. And so as we grow into adulthood, we have a vague idea about God. We might even have some pretty strong beliefs, but we haven't taken the time to really develop our and realize that we are on the soul journey. So there's some kind of understanding and some belief, but in general, it happens around the holidays, and let's not bother me with having to deal with this on a regular basis. Yes, there's a God, but I'm busy. And so largely that understanding comes from very often that understanding comes from growing up in the church and having the faith or the religious group or affiliation of your parents. But the level we talk on is the next level, or even the level after that, where there is a desire and a waking up to the fact that God is everywhere, God is everything, and in fact, God is in me. I was just talking to a friend the other day about that very thing, so I'm gonna come back to that. So, depending on where you are on the journey, and if you're listening to the show, my guess is you're in the last category where you are seeking to know God, you are seeking to understand, your place in the larger journey. You're seeking to understand even your soul, that you realize maybe you've been here before. Maybe there's more to you than meets the eye, and you're really beginning to get that on the soul journey there is work to be done. So, as I consider all of this, I can see that if you're in that stage, that you are a soul that is evolving. Now, what can happen as we begin to move into some kind of realization, we begin to judge the people that are in the first category that I talked about, who don't have God and all of that. So we want to be very mindful that if we begin to judge others in their journey, we're actually going backwards in our development rather than forward. So I felt like I wanted to lift that up because so many of us, once we start to get a little bit more spiritually, when we become more spiritually awakened, we all of a sudden see with new eyes, right? So we start seeing all the ways, all the things around us from a different perspective. So in 2019, we talked a lot on the show about changing perspective. We talked a lot about taking deep breaths, about moving into the present moment. We, talked about being very aware of how our behavior impacted others. This year is going to really be about deepening our personal understanding as it relates to the larger collective. It is about soul growth and evolution, but it's not going to be to the extent where it's only about us. And we touched on that last year, and I'm always touching on that. But this year especially, we want to keep expanding back out in our awareness. And true soul work includes emotional work. It includes a work in the shadow. It includes working with our dreams. Soul work is very broad and very vast. So that's what we're going to move into more and more this year. When we are unaware that there's God, our focus is very myopic. It's very limited. When we are in a stage of being interested or somewhat aware that there is a God, and we go in the church life, we used to call this CEOs. You're a Christmas and Easter only kind of churchgoer, which means very typically that you don't really have a real faith because you just go as a matter of tradition.
Or
almost.
some family obligation.
Or family obligation, right. Well, when you begin to understand that you are a soul and that there is an actual journey that you're on, rather than just seeing life from this limited perspective of eat, drink, and be merry, of I'm going to get all I can, of, okay, I'm going to do the best I can and try to be a good person, which is kind of the second level I was speaking of. You begin to experience life from a totally different perspective. You can look back on what's happened from a spiritual perspective rather than just a human perspective. And this makes life much richer and much more meaningful, and also gives you clues into where you're headed and what your future may be like, what might be in store for you on the level of the soul. So we don't practice our faith here on this show as an obligation. We don't do it because our parents did it. We don't worship a God outside of ourselves. We see that the divine is everywhere present. As a matter of fact, Dave, there's a song I definitely want to put in the link, a link to that song, Holy Now. I don't know. I can't believe I'm spacing on the, is it Peter Mayer?
Yes, Peter Mayer.
Peter Mayer, Holy Now. And it talks about every moment is holy. Everything is holy. And so when we begin to broaden our understanding, broaden our perspective, broaden our awareness, we see our soul in proper perspective to the expansiveness of the universe. We also see and can view life with new eyes. Let me give you some for instances that might help to ground this. So when I was a kid and growing up, like most kids, I had good times and I had bad times. I was happy and I was sad. I felt loved. I felt ignored. I wondered if I was adopted. My family always laughs when I said that because they said, well, you look like everybody, I had those normal life kid questions. Well, there was bad things that happened. Where do I put those? How do I understand that? And so at the time, I was very confused. I was victimized. I was hurt. I was lost. And at that time, that was all I could see about the situation. But as I grew and as I developed in my spiritual awareness now, yes, I grew in my body, but my mind was still stuck in the past. But as I finally started to develop spiritually, I began to see those things, those instances, from a completely different perspective. And I could make sense of, I could have compassion for myself. I could see how everything that happened cause my soul to grow, even those most painful things. I could also see how justice was not served in some of those instances, but that for me, forgiveness was necessary to keep moving forward. At the time, if you would have said one day you're going to forgive this person, I would have said you're out of your mind. Because this was too painful, this was too harmful, this should have never happened. And from a very human level, I would still say that. But spiritually, I have a new perspective. I have a perspective on the family I was born into and why. I have a perspective on what my soul is here to learn. I have a perspective on how that learning now is impacting thousands and thousands of people. So my perspective has changed with my search for God, both deepening and expanding at the same time. So to grow spiritually or to search for God completely changes your perspective of the past, present, and future. Instead of being stuck in what mystics call the land of the opposites, which is good, bad, up, down, right, wrong.
It's binary.
Yeah. Yeah. Your soul is non-binary.
Yeah.
I should say your soul is non-binary. So there's a great writing from Rumi that says, out beyond the ideas of right and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And that's the field we live and play in on this show and for those of us doing the deeper soul work. So if you are with us in this work, it means you come through all of those other levels of development as a soul. There was a time, maybe even in this lifetime, where the people around you were getting all they could. Eat, drink, and be merry looked like how life was lived. And, get as much as you can, buy as much as you can. The one with the most toys wins. We may have grown up in an environment like that, and we thought that's all there was. Well, then maybe somebody we knew took us to church. And that started, what's this about? And usually, if not always, to begin the deeper work, some break has to happen in the ego. It is often a diagnosis. It is often a loss. It could be a death of someone we love or even an animal that we love. It could be a change in our relationship status. It could be a loss of job. So these things are, when they're happening, feel like cataclysmic changes. And so our soul starts searching for something because we realize whatever we're experiencing now, something is missing. And this is what the search for God is about. Realizing that the one with the most toys wins is a very empty idea for how to live life. And if we've done that, we know, when we go home at night and we're alone, or even if we're in a relationship and it's empty, that we keep thinking something is missing. And so this break that normally has to happen is the wake-up call. Yeah. So the moment of awakening is almost always difficult, and I will say, did life happen?
Right.
As long as the money's coming in and life seems good, everybody's happy. As long as somebody's paying the bill, life seems good, right? Yep. So
and we see that politically. I don't want to get all of politics, but we see that politically. If things are going well and everybody feels like the economy's cooking along or whatever, then it's easy to look the other way, or to be tempted to look the other way when things start going sideways.
Yes. It's like I don't even need to pay attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, there's something going on over there. That's fine. It's all the basic programs are in place. All is well. Yep. I'm not getting screwed on my taxes, so it's probably fine. Well, yeah, there's been a wake-up call there now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about that on the show. I think that's a great, Yeah, that's a great example of how awakening happens. So we are always having little mini moments of awakening. And so after that initial awakening, then that's when the path begins, really. That's when the path really begins. But this moment where we suddenly realize what we're doing is not enough and something is missing, this causes us to deepen our search. So I want to encourage you to come back right after these messages. We're going to talk more about the search for God.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407-628-0705. Also, we would like to extend our special thanks to Unity of Nashville, a sister ministry of CCU Orlando. If you're searching for a like-minded church community and a personal connection that supports your heart and mind in the Central Tennessee area, then join Unity of Nashville at 10 a.m. every Sunday at 5125 Franklin Pike. For more information, head over to unityofnashville.org. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. First show of the year. I'm really excited about that. That is 2020.
I know it's 2020. We got some new sponsorship things kind of happening. So that ad break just now, I guess it's an ad break officially.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It
our
is.
sponsor break, I should say,
Yeah.
probably sounded a little bit different, and that's okay. And we also want to give a shout out to our coffee sponsor for the day.
Yay, Lineage Coffee in Orlando, Florida. Awesome.
Yeah, they really take care of us. And anytime is a good time to have a Lineage here in the studio.
Yes, coffee is always a good thing in my life. I was off it for several years. God, what was I thinking?
gosh.
I know. So that was one of these breaks in my consciousness, like I was just talking about, very honestly. So right before the break, we were talking about how very often the beginning of awakening is this, break of the ego. It's often something happening in life that we don't want, don't expect, don't feel like we need. But there it is. And so our soul begins to wake up. In my case, it was an illness, at one time that really woke me up. So I'm sure you're already thinking to some of those things that started your journey. And really, I shouldn't say started. I should say that catapulted your journey forward like a couple of lifetimes, because you said, okay, this is not working. And I want to pause to talk a little bit about this feeling. There's almost like a feeling of desperateness. And the great teacher and saint Mayor Baba, the one who said, when you have done all of you that you can do, don't worry, be happy. Everybody knows the Bobby McFerrin song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, which is a quote. He quotes Mayor Baba, but he left the first part out, which is when you have done all that you can do, don't worry, be happy. But Mayor Baba was a strong teacher. I think he died 68 or 69. But he talked a lot about that there was an unharnessed desperateness that was really destructive. But there's a divine desperateness that leads to growth. And that unharnessed desperateness is the kind that leads to depression, addiction, even at times suicide. Because souls that are not, for various reasons, souls that have been really hurt or damaged that lead to suicide, it's because there's no divine awareness. You can't be in the divine and commit suicide. And so as we look at history and we look at things that happen to individuals, for some, these things happen, it's a wake-up call. For some, they still can't find God, and they make their passing, and maybe they do it another time, another lifetime. but I like the term divine desperateness because Mary Mann Morrissey called it, what did she call it? I'll come back to that. But divine discontent. She called it a divine discontent. But to me, desperateness is a better word because when you're in that moment of what the heck just happened, you do feel desperate. You do feel desperate. Actually, that song too, Dave, this is the air I breathe, or this is the air I breathe. Yeah. There's a line in that song that says, I'm desperate for you. And I've had Unity people say, well, I'm not desperate. I think, then you have not lived if you're not desperate for God. We all have moments where we're desperate for God. It's when it's when those things in life happen that we're not expecting. Nothing wrong with being desperate for God. That's when you know God is in those places. As long as you're acting like you don't need God and everything's going fine, you're never going to find God. God fills up that broken place in you. So even though you're not really broken, we feel broken, but that's just the place that we find God. So I think this is a wonderful understanding that there's this divine desperateness that leads us forward on the journey. And for me, at different stages of the journey, I've had to ask myself, either everything is God or God doesn't exist. And those were my two things. I think most of us have had that question. It's either all God or none of it is. It's either God or nothing. And years ago, I was starting to deepen my awareness, and it seems to me that every time I've started to deepen my awareness, this question comes up. I'd been on the journey many years when I started reading some of the teachers of the East, the Sai Babas, the Paramahansa Yogananda, Meher Baba, some of these very known teachers from India. They were avatars. Could perform miracles. And, I remember at the time that I started learning about these things that I could not believe that these things were not being reported on, that miracles were happening like what Jesus did. Things out of thin air, people being healed. And I did a lot of research and I did a lot of reading, frankly. One of the books I was reading was a book of one of Sai Baba's devotees. And there's a story in that book where there was a group that was praying together, and they were all followers of Sai Baba, a devotee of Sai Baba. So they, meditated too. They did his teachings. Anyway, so they were in this living room, and they were all having a deep meditation together. And during the meditation, one of the members put out his hand, and supposedly, this is the story in the book, this is what I read, a rock fell from the ceiling into his hand, and it was a special rock, it was a lingam, a special rock from the Ganges River, and it was still wet from the river. That was what proposed to have happened. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I read that, and everything I had ever known came flooded in. And I said, I am from Red Oak, Georgia. I am from Red Oak, Georgia. And I grew up Methodist and Baptist. Yes, I had some Cherokee mixed in there too. But my God, is this...
This is not
either...
okay.
Either I'm completely gullible and I'm going to be shipped off to be in some ashram somewhere, or, this is either madness or this is really God, and it was like, this is either nothing, this is all made up, or this is God. And that was really my thing. So I was sitting there in this little apartment. I was in ministerial school. I was going, my God, what do I do with this information? Because it just blew my idea of God, number one. It blew my idea of God that somebody in today's world could do such miracles that Jesus did. That was number one. Number two, it blew my mind that nobody knew about it. And number three, I'm like, well, if it's true, how come nobody knows about it? Right.
Well, yeah. Why is this not front page news?
Well, and evidently the reason it didn't, everybody's scared of it. So the more research I did, but so I was sitting there, and I remember because it was winter in Kansas City. I had this little small apartment looking over this, believe it or not, I was looking over this gorgeous golf course. Had a little fire going in my fireplace. Little tiny love seat. I was sitting there. It was from the love seat was about 20 years old. I was sitting there reading, and I read that statement about the rock from the Ganges River falling in this man's hand. I said, all right, God, here's the deal. We're having a come to Jesus moment right now. Either all this is real or it isn't. And I need to know which it is, because I'm started to talk to God out loud. I'm saying, I have dedicated my life to you. I have dedicated my life to your service. I moved my whole life to Kansas City. And I had been on spiritual retreat when I found this Sai Baba book, and it like fell off the shelf, that kind of thing. And I said, so I know you want me to know and read this material, but I don't know if I can go this far with you, God. I don't know. I need to know if this is true. So I said, if this is real, and this happened to this guy in a prayer group, then God, you've got to show up for me the way you showed up through Sai Baba to this man. And that's all there is to it. And if I don't get what this man got, I'm out. That's it. And I mean, now I look back and think, my God, what an ego. I question God.
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? But and so I said, all right, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to hold out my hand like this man, and I'm going to get my rock from the Ganges River. Fine. It doesn't matter where I am. If this is real, Sai Baba's real, God's real, whatever, I'm going to wait for it. So I waited for an hour and a half, at least, about an hour and a half. Yeah. And I said, okay, God, this is a big request. I give you 24 hours. And if I don't get this rock, I don't know what I'm going to do. I may be out. I'm out. This is the conversation I was having. So I went to sleep, got up the next morning, and I went into my office, and it was Christmas time. We were doing a Secret Santa in the building. And, of course, Secret Santa means people leave you gifts and you don't know, who it is. Well, this particular day, I went to my mailbox to check my mail. And as I reached in, this little thing in there, and a little card in there. It's like, come to my office. So I went to this friend of mine's office, and she handed me this little gift. I said, well, it's Secret Santa. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to tell me. She goes, well, I wanted to give you this in person. Well, I started to leave her office. I was about halfway down the hall, and she said, oh, hey, wait, I forgot the most important thing. I said, well, what is it? She said, just open it right here. I want to see you open it. And I was like, gee, what is this big deal, So I opened the box, and what do you think was in there? Say it, Dave.
Yeah, it was a rock from the Ganges.
It was a rock from the Ganges River. And I said, well, what is it? Because I didn't know. And I said, what is it? She said, it's a rock. And I was like, well, yeah.
Like Charlie Brown Halloween,
and then,
rock.
A rock. And then she goes, from the Ganges River. So it was about... I went back thinking about that because it was in one of my books. I thought that was 12 hours. That was like 12 hours from when I asked. Now, I didn't get it the way the man got it in the manifestation, falling out of the ceiling. But I sure got it in my time frame. I said, I am paying attention. And I had this, I've never really spoken about this deeply, but I had this overwhelming sense that I was not in this alone, that the universe was very active and interested in my life, and that, in fact, there was some higher energy guiding in my steps. So this is the journey of the evolving soul. These types of experiences, these types of wake-up calls, this even type of questioning. It's okay to question God. As a matter of fact, it's great. It's healthy. So these moments of awakening, you will know you are at a choice point in your awakening journey when you start to say it's all or nothing. It's either God or it's nothing. I have really come to this awareness in my work with people. I I was talking with a friend the other day, and we were just discussing how right now we both feel, so close to God. And, you know, uh, uh, a phrase we often say in spirituality is, I'm going to hold you in prayer. And I often say it. I'm going to hold you in prayer. I'm going to lift you up, and the question I come to now, if somebody says that, if I say it, well, who am I praying to? Because God is already here. It's always been God. God always has been. So these are the kind of awarenesses. These are the kind of, this is the kind of knowing that begins to come to you. And so these new experiences will just cause you to think. They'll cause you to ponder like life from this higher awareness. And that's what, again, opens you up to spiritual awakening, to self-realization. Yeah. So in your process, what you might be, a lot of people right now are setting goals for the future. A lot of people are like, here it's New Year's intentions. Is what I like to call, instead of, what's the word most people use? Resolutions.
Resolutions, yeah.
New Year's resolutions. I like to have spiritual intentions because I read this article a couple of years ago that most New Year's resolutions, 90% of New Year's resolutions are forgotten in the first 7 days. But spiritual intentions that you're working with on the level of the soul don't get forgotten because they get worked. And so as you're moving forward, as you're thinking about the new year, God is calling you to more. I want you to take some time to look back and see if you can note some of those points on the journey that were change points for you. And this will help you see your life and even your soul's journey in a completely different perspective. As you do that, not only will your current situation look a little differently, you're going to start viewing the past completely different, because you will realize that even the times where you didn't realize your soul was there. Even though you didn't realize all this was preparing for the future, your soul was guiding you. And so you will begin to see everything from this new spiritual perspective. So there's no longer just a conversation or an email that you get sent that ticks you off. Wow, this is coming to me for a reason. How do I handle this? And so you start to handle life from a higher perspective. And this is what we see the whole world needs. Not just here in Orlando or not just the United States, but our world. We need to wake up to this spiritual reality that we are, to live from this place so that we take everything, all of life, from a spiritual perspective. So I want to encourage you to just spend some time just thinking, meditating on, contemplating these points of change in your life. And then next week, we're going to do even more about this. Dave, do you have the title right there? I think it's called Stages of the Path.
It is, yep, the stages of the path.
Yeah. And so as you are awakening, you will begin to find right now even that as you are searching for God, you actually find God in yourself. As I was saying, when we pray, who are we praying to? No, we pray as one. We pray to know the truth. We pray to align with the truth. But as you grow and as you develop in consciousness, you will be amazed that as you grow and develop, your search for God leads you right back to you. That ultimately, the God that you seek has been existing right there in the midst of your soul all along. The God of your being is alive in you now, all around, even in the air that you breathe. This is the awareness we want to live from. This higher spiritual perspective. Everything is holy now, as the song says, right? So I want to encourage you to do the deeper work where you're looking at your history, you're looking at those choice points. And as you do, this will give you greater perspective on life right now and then prepare you for the next stage of the spiritual journey. And I also really want to encourage you to, start a gathering maybe in your home or talk to a friend or two about the things you're discovering about yourself and on the journey, because that helps you learn and grow and develop more as you listen to other people on the journey in their, in their process. You can even create a group that watches this show or listens to the show and then turn it off and talk about it. What happened for you? How did it lift you up? What did you learn? Or what did you disagree with even? All of those things are going to be very informative for you and how your soul takes its next step. So, friend, we thank you so much for joining us today. We want to encourage you to continue on this search for God, knowing that as you search, you will find God right in the midst of you. So we bless you on the journey, dear friend, as always, and we look forward to seeing you next week and wish you with big hearts a Happy New Year.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by Natural Awakenings Magazine and Unity of Nashville. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, Susanna Garcia, and Shayla Mount. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2020 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.